Hyrox North American Championships, what went down? So for the Euros, I did a technique analysis on the elite athletes and their form and technique choice that they used on each station, which I think you guys found useful. So if you didn't catch that, you can go back and watch that one. For this race, what I wanted to kind of do is more of a dive into the race strategy and try to give you guys some takeaways on what could apply to you and what might not actually apply to you. Because with all my videos, I try to share what I'm doing, what the elite athletes are doing, but mainly give you guys some practical advice to take away and use. So starting off, we kind of need to address the difference between the elite races and your normal open or pro races. And the main thing is there's much more direct racing amongst competitors and each other, and it's not necessarily about getting the fastest time, but beating the other athletes. And in fact, the course layout for the elite races is always it's done in like lanes, so it doesn't actually allow for the fastest course, so you can't really compare these elite races time based to your normal open Hyrox. So what I found very interesting is that we had different winners from and a lot of different positions from the European Championships compared to the North American Champs. And with a lot of the same people that raced in both, but they had very different positions. So like in the Euros, Tim beat Michael and Joffrey, and in the US, Michael beat Tim and Joffrey. In the Euros, Lauren beat Meg and Michaela, and quite convincingly. But in the US, Michaela and Meg beat Lauren. And then, of course, you had David Magida, who finished 8th in European Championships, and he won the damn thing. So a lot of shake-ups, and it's sort of I was thinking, trying to work out what you put it down to, and I think when it comes to racing, it kind of does come down to three things: capacity, execution, and momentum. Capacity is basically your fitness, your skill, and your ability to work. So Hyrox is labeled the series of fitness racing, but unless you can execute the perfect race, you can't express your full fitness capacity. So the time difference between the European Championships and the North American Championships was only 3 weeks. So you can make some adaptations in that time and hone in on specific skills and elements, but in that time period, you're not going to make a massive fitness capacity change. But what you can do is change your race plan, and how that goes can affect your momentum within the race. And it's something that I see with a lot of athletes that I coach, and myself included, is your fitness capacity can be really high, but if the execution goes wrong, you can't express that fitness. So you can do a lot of training and feel really fit going into it, but unless you execute well, you're not going to feel like you left it all out there. Dylan Scott, who finished second to David Magida, actually mentioned this point in his post afterwards. He said, "Hard work, talent, and execution lined up for both of us. I am not good enough that if we all race flawlessly, I will win. But I'm consistent enough that if I show up fit and you make a mistake, I can and will take advantage of that." And that's exactly what happened. Dylan is still quite young, but he's very dialed into his capacity. He knows his work rate, what it needs to be 15 minutes into the race so that he can perform at his maximum 55 minutes into the race. David Megida also had the fitness capacity and the execution lined up, but I think the thing that got him to that first place was momentum. And momentum is the last factor that we saw on full display in this race. Rich Ryan kind of discussed this on his last podcast, and it's something I've come to feel is very present in my races. And even if you're not necessarily racing against people, if you feel good coming out of one station, the next one will likely go well, and you can build momentum that way. But it means starting under your maximum perceived exertion so that you feel good going from one to the next. The flip side is also true. If you overexert on the first station and you feel bad after the sled push, you've got a long freaking race ahead of you, because there's no reprieve. If you want to regain your energy, you need to have the foresight and the almost patience to slow down, and that means your splits will get longer, people will probably pass you, and that often puts you in a negative headspace. So it takes a huge amount of willpower to shift that momentum back onto your side. But it is something that we've seen athletes do. Meg slid back and forth, so she was coming in first. She dropped back a few places, and it was very easy at that point to slide all the way back. But then she fought to get back into that race. And actually, with both the men and the women's side, we see these momentum swings happen a lot. I think Ryan Kent and Michael Sandbach came out aggressive. I think a little bit of ego kind of came into play. Ryan, who finished second at the World Championships in Vegas ahead of Michael last year, but he hadn't raced against that field recently. And I think he maybe thought he should be the fastest, so whatever the lead pace is, he needs to hold it. But when Michael started kind of jockeying for first, it caused both of them to overexert early. They had very fast sled push, and I think, especially, both of them, you saw they was feeling rough through the race. I mean, I don't know what was going on in their head, but just from their body language, you could kind of see it. And then, like, each time David and Dylan passed Michael and Ryan, they were hurting and they was losing momentum, and David and Dylan were gaining momentum. On the female side, you had Lauren Weeks, who won the Euros pretty, as I say, convincingly. She was certainly the one to beat. She led the race pretty much from the start to the finish. But in North American champs, Michaela and Meg, they made a point of not letting her go. Meg even said this before her race. That was her race strategy. So put the pressure on her, and although they may have struggled to keep up in the first part, physically they gained momentum in staying with her and eventually passing her. Michaela is a very, very good rower. As I discussed in the last video, she probably had the best technique out of them. And she used it to make a move from third to fourth. She was like third or fourth, and then she came out of the row, sort of tied for first, and passing Lauren shortly after. She was sort of then determined to keep that lead. And if you look at her splits, her back half times, they got faster compared to the European Championships, where she had likely kind of acknowledged that, she wasn't going to win this. She just had to kind of hold off third. So it was kind of cruising in at the end rather than on this one, she was really motoring, like gunning for that first place. So what can we take from this? Well, I think definitely a greater awareness of those three things. So your capacity, execution, and momentum. So the better understanding you can get of your own personal capacity, your own where your fitness is currently at, the better you have an understanding of that, the less likely you will overexert without realizing it. If you know your strengths and weaknesses, you can better execute on your plan. I like to go easier on the things that I'm good at to give me the energy to push through the things that I'm bad at. So I will go easy on the sleds and then on the sleds and like the rowers, because it allows me to keep a decent time on the burpees and like the runs. So I'm sort of, even though I feel like on these I can push a faster sled or I could row a faster time, I can hold a decent time and reserve energy. And you might find the opposite is true. Like especially I think on the running side, if you're a good runner, you wanna weaponize that. So it likely means that you want to go easier on your stations so that you can really attack those runs and take off more total time. So that's all I've got for you today. Drop a comment if you found this useful or you want to share your opinions. And if you are looking for courses, classes, coaching around Hyrox, you can check out my website at coactiveperformance.com. And any questions, direct personal stuff, you can send to me at Woodsy Workout on Instagram and follow for more fitness tips and tricks. And then we are also doing a Hyrox simulation day. So if you are in the Buckinghamshire area, we are running a Hyrox simulation day on February the 25th at Coactive Health in Chatham Giles. Again, message me on Instagram at Woodsy Workout if you want to get involved in that.